Let's get to know Daichai, an ordinary student preparing for university entrance exams with his best friend, Hibiki, as they are about to graduate soon. Afterward, they go to eat together and begin talking about the future as well as a popular mobile app called Nika. In this app, you take a photo, and suddenly, on a random day, you receive pictures of your registered friends when they are about to meet God. It sounds like a silly concept. However, somehow, people are drawn to this app. At the train station, we meet a girl named Nita, someone from another class who seems to catch Daichai's attention. Or at least, she's Daichai's type. He hasn't actually talked to her yet. But more importantly, both of them receive a recording from Nika, a video showing them at the same station during a train accident. Things start to feel strange, so they decide to leave just to be safe. But as they try to leave, an earthquake hits, and the events in the video start happening for real. There's no way to stop it, but something odd occurs. The Nika app speaks to Hibiki, asking if he still wants to live, an obvious answer. This grants him permission to download the summoning app. However, before understanding what it truly is, we see him waking up after the incident, as does Daichai. At that moment, a group of strange, werewolf-like creatures appear and start taking other people. Additionally, they aim to take the only other survivor, Nita. However, just as they approach Nita, a large ogre emerges to protect her, similar to what happens with Daichai's phone, from which a small ghost-like figure appears. Hibiki refers to these creatures as demons. The key point is that he takes advantage of the situation to approach Nita and bring her along with them. The three of them escape to a relatively safe place and begin analyzing what happened. Everyone received the same question from the app, so it makes sense that the demons appeared from it. It seems the ogre that emerged from Nita's phone lost because she received a notification stating it needed to rest for some time. So, the three of them move as fast as they can toward the subway exit. There, they realize that everything is in chaos. The earthquake caused significant damage on a large scale. News spreads quickly, and everyone starts calling their families, including Daichai and Nita, but the connection suddenly cuts off. When the rescue team arrives at the subway tunnel, Hibiki goes to tell them about the train accident, but he is thrown out of the area. These well-dressed people are from an organization with more authority than the police, so even the police are not allowed to enter. Daichai informs Hibiki that he managed to speak to his parents, and fortunately, both of their families were evacuated together as they were in the same place when the incident occurred. Unfortunately, Nita wasn't able to reach her family, so Hibiki decides they should take her home, even though it's a bit far, so she can ensure her family is safe. It won't be easy, there are still some areas in ruins, and that's not even considering what the government officials were talking about. A woman named Makoto has a map of the manifestation cases happening, as she and her colleagues already knew that certain problems were approaching this world. She also mentions something about a prophecy, the apocalypse, and survival. Humans can only be saved if they collaborate with demons. After a long wait to contact Nita's family, she begins apologizing to both of them for bringing them together, when in fact they should have been looking for their own families. Hibiki tells her not to worry about it. In fact, Hibiki thinks it's better for the three of them to stay together until they learn more about the app. Night falls, and many people are still in the streets, including Hibiki and the others, who start debating whether they are possessed or something similar, but Hibiki feels more like they are being tested. This seems to be the case, as a strange artifact suddenly appears in the sky, shaped like an inverted cone. Despite its odd appearance, the object explodes and begins attacking anything in sight, causing people to flee the area. Nita falls and injures her leg. Hibiki stays with Nita to protect her, while Daichai runs away. Their only hope is to defend themselves using the summoning app on Nita's phone. The monster summoned is able to withstand a few attacks before vanishing, and at that moment, Hibiki receives a message from Nikaya with a recording of Daichai from another district. It seems Daichai didn't want his friends to get hurt, so he drove a truck into the artifact, but it clearly ended badly since the truck couldn't destroy it. Hibiki's anger finally allows him to summon a monster, this time a white tiger known as Byako, one of the strongest demons recognized by the government. The tiger is agile. At first, it struggles to avoid the alien's attacks, but after adapting, it responds effectively. Byako manages to wound the alien with its claws, and its electrical attack reduces it to dust. Thus, the three of them secure victory. As it turns out, Daichai was saved by a fairy summoned by Nita. The leader of this government organization orders Hibiki and his companions to be captured, and he introduces himself as a member of the Japan Meteorological Agency. Yes, the same agency that usually gives weather warnings. Hibiki and the others are taken into custody in a highway vehicle, which could actually be used to evacuate people, as Daichai points out, although his comment irritates one of the agents. However, it's clear that the government doesn't care much about people's safety but is more focused on whatever is attacking Earth. The road they take ends at the Diet Building, a well-known structure in Japan, and in this anime, they depict the headquarters of this group as being hidden beneath it. Nita and Hibiki are placed in a room to wait, while Hibiki is taken to another room to learn the truth about what's really going on. Makoto explains that this organization is responsible for monitoring the spiritual energy barrier that protects Japan, which has prevented enemies, not from other countries, but from anomalous races such as spirits, ghosts, demons, or whatever they're called, from attacking. The leader of this organization is Yamato, an albino, who is impressed that someone like Hibiki was able to summon Byako, an avatar, and one of the 4 symbols of the Chinese constellations. For years, there have been ways to summon demons, but currently, no one else in this place can summon the white tiger except Hibiki, which is why Yamato decides to reveal the whole truth. These summoning methods have been studied to be implemented into electronic devices like apps. The problem is, they don't know how the app ended up on their phones. They knew this incident was going to happen, which makes Hibiki frustrated because they didn't evacuate the city with all this information. Makoto doesn't fully agree either, but it was the only option they had since the strange artifact that appeared is the weakest enemy they will face over the course of 7 days. 7 enemies will appear over those 7 days. Each creature will be stronger than the last. Unless they manage to defeat all the enemies that appear, the world will be completely consumed. These creatures come from another dimension and are known as Septentrian, which can only be harmed by spiritual energy. That's why it's important for Hibiki to join the fight. Experts in the laboratory are trying to investigate this app, which is far more advanced than the one they created. The app analyzes the user's attitude and then puts them into some sort of demon auction, which determines which demon will appear based on the chosen monster. If the monster deems you unworthy, it's likely that it won't welcome you kindly when summoned. Hibiki gathered with his friends at dawn to reassure them that everything would be okay. They would be released because they were only checking their phones. This lie somewhat calmed Nita, but deep inside, Hibiki was very stressed, knowing that wherever they went, the world would still be consumed. Hibiki had no choice but to cooperate with these people. However, first, he asked them to promise to take his friends to reunite with their families. This simple request became complicated due to the terrible road conditions, and most of the area where Nita lived was already destroyed. She was shocked by the horrific scene and decided to go alone. But they clearly couldn't let that happen, so they chose to accompany her to a shelter to look for her family. The place was bleak, everything had died after the tragedy, and the walls were covered with notes from missing family members. Daichai kept feeling it was unfair not to help evacuate these people, but it wasn't the organization's responsibility. Makoto was only permitted to bring them here and couldn't accompany them for the entire journey. The 3 continued searching for clues about Nita's family, to no avail. So, Hibiki decided to stay optimistic and look for something to drink for a short break, while Makoto silently suffered, knowing that what Daichai said was true. Hibiki walked around the place with a bottle of water. Seeing so many people in the church in such conditions made him uncomfortable, especially since most of them were placing their hopes on some kind of god. He knew that help wouldn't come. Only people like him could fight in these difficult times, and the time to prove it had arrived. The only spiritual being to enter the church was a disgusting bird monster, another summoned creature. However, it wasn't alone. When Hibiki summoned Vyako to stop it, it became clear that there were more. These monsters kept appearing from phones lying on the ground, likely a result of the same app Hibiki and the others had used. Hibiki was able to hold out for the moment, but he didn't know how long he could keep going. Daichai wanted to help him, but his guardian spirit was still under repair for unknown reasons. The only one to come to his aid was Makoto, who saw everything as she drove by and decided to return and assist with her Sky Warrior. She mentioned the phones that might be summoning these monsters and told Hibiki to hold on as best he could until she found the phone. The task wasn't too difficult thanks to Vyako's strength. With a powerful lightning strike, he was able to defeat all the bird monsters in front of him, while Makoto destroyed the phone, ensuring everyone's safety in the church. However, seeing such power suddenly, it was overwhelming. The people who witnessed everything were afraid of Hibiki, believing they might be his next victims. But this feeling faded when 2 children thanked him for saving them. This small gesture became the reason why Hibiki decided to join the organization, of course accompanied by his 2 friends. One because he didn't want to leave him alone, and the other because he didn't want to go back to crying in a corner knowing he could fight. Yamato welcomed them, with Fumi present. Fumi was the scientist responsible for the security and summoning system in the agency, the programmer of the app they used. Hibiki and his team's first mission was to find this scientist, who had gone missing after the arrival of invaders from space. On the way to Fumi's last known location, they discovered a secret train belonging to the agency. While thinking of how to handle the situation, Daichai bought some monsters at an auction. This train took them from Tokyo to Osaka, where other agency members awaited them, including a formidable woman named Hinako and a white-haired, unfriendly man named Keita. These two had just arrived in the area to assist in the search, just like them, but having come a day earlier, they had already begun their investigation. Hina gave them the latest information about the situation at Fumi's office. There were no signs of conflict, so Fumi might have vanished or managed to escape unnoticed, a very difficult feat given the place was full of cameras. Keita preferred to ignore this investigation because what mattered to him was hunting demons, like the one he had just defeated seconds ago, and like the others he planned to fight, which were jumping around strangely in the sky. Hibiki had a good intuition and knew there was another reason why they had been sent to this area, something related to a mysterious silver-haired man rumored to be testing the agency. The investigation yielded no results, and they soon found themselves being hacked by this man, causing the security system to collapse. This happened nationwide. Additionally, there is an issue with the app that warns Hinako that Keita will face a bad fate. Hibiki begins to connect the dots. He asks one of the staff members to investigate the area where Keita will be, which turns out to be a location with the highest hacking activity, so they know where to go to stop it. Hibiki concludes that this is the real reason Yamato sent them there, as it's strange to send a few rookies to investigate the disappearance of someone so important. He tries to confront Yamato over the phone, but Yamato doesn't want to waste time and orders them to go to that place with the summoners in the area. Hibiki asks the staff member to warn Keita to leave the area to avoid his bad fate, but unfortunately, he receives the call just as Keita begins to be attacked. With a bit of luck, Keita manages to dodge several attacks until he summons his demon, which is able to fend off this and all the other demons that appear. However, the demons keep appearing, and Keita's summoning can't continue to protect him, so Keita has to keep dodging until he stumbles and almost falls into a place that would be extremely dangerous. Fortunately, Hinako arrives just in time with her summoned monster to save him, and Hibiki's tiger is also there to protect them both. Daichai summons his monster for fun, but they are too weak and can't do much. Still, they have to do something, so Nita goes to find the hacker, while the others continue to hold off the constantly appearing monsters. The system's security layers collapse one by one. The team is exhausted from the endless fighting, and they still haven't found the hacker. This leaves Yamato with only one option, to use a virus called Soul Deal, programmed by Fumi before she disappeared, which is extremely dangerous to use. Of course, we're talking about a computer virus, one capable of hacking into the computer this man is using to summon all the monsters. With this virus, they can stop all his demon summoning. This action only buys them a little time, enough to find the mastermind, who turns out not to be the silver-haired man, but Fumi herself. Fumi summons a monster far stronger than the others, which defeats Nita and knocks her into the air. However, nothing happens to her because Keita saves her. Everyone is shocked to see that it's him. It's basically impossible to defend the agency's systems when they are up against their own creator. Moreover, the monster is able to stop Vyako's beam without any trouble. The only way to prevent Fumi from destroying the last layer of the system's security is to eject her from the computer, something quite difficult with that guardian around. Hibiki devises a plan involving Keita and Daichai. First, he orders his tiger to attack, drawing attention and preventing Fumi from using her shield to block Keita's strike. While they deliver the final blow, Daichai manages to reach the server room of the building to destroy it and cut off the connection. It seems like a victory, but unfortunately, they were too naive. The demon she summoned was the true mastermind controlling Fumi. He reappears and launches a powerful attack that hits Keita directly. Additionally, the attack causes Fumi to restart the virus to completely destroy the agency's systems. This is terrible because even though Daichai managed to save Fumi from the debris, the demon's attack throws Keita away. And what the app predicted happens. As if that weren't enough, the Osaka system also falls, and the spiritual barrier in the area disappears, allowing invaders to appear in the city. Hibiki feels devastated because he couldn't save Keita, even though he knew what would happen, but there's no time to mourn. other agency members arrive to bring them all back to fight the invaders. The mysterious man and the demon who destroyed the shield are gathering to see how humanity will face this invasion. As mentioned earlier, the silver-haired man was only testing them to measure their strength. These aliens are 10 times stronger than they expected. The situation is very serious. Only a few selected people can join the fight, and Daichai isn't included as he's considered too weak. But he's happy as long as he can still be useful. So, the medical team is enough for him. Hinako is assigned to the front lines of defense, while Nita must stay behind as a reserve, along with Hibiki, who is currently on the roof, having a small argument with Yamato. That kind of person isn't well liked. He doesn't care about Keita at all. He even sees it as a good trade since he managed to save Hibiki. Besides, he says that if Hibiki doesn't want to fight, it's better for him to leave, because many people will risk their lives to save the world. And if he continues with a weak mentality, no matter how strong his invocation is, many agents will fall. Some other agents are trying to restore the spiritual barrier through a ritual like before. And somehow, Nita finds herself in the middle, searching for Hibiki. Fortunately, she encounters a guard who decides not to do his job properly. Instead of sending her back to headquarters, he gives her Hibiki's exact location. The giant alien fires a massive freezing beam, destroying part of the city and shattering the control tower's shield, which serves as the central base of Osaka. Keita's team is hit by the attack, with only Daichai managing to escape the strike that wipes out everyone with him in seconds. This is far worse than he expected, so he calls Hibiki, urging him to leave, saying there's no need to keep fighting as all he'll find is a quick path to heaven. Yamato cuts off the call so Hibiki doesn't hear his friend's advice, although it wasn't necessary since Hibiki had no intention of listening to anyone, be it Daichai or his boss. He believes he should have fought earlier to avoid so many casualties, but they needed to devise a strategy to learn the enemy's capabilities. Geek is already tired of all this, so he decides to go fight with his tiger, but Yamato isn't worried because Hinako is already there to act as bait. She arrives but is unsuccessful. Hinako and her team fight desperately, but the drones released by the giant monster are too much to handle. She's almost hit by an attack, but Hibiki saves her. Then she orders Bako to strike, but in doing so, she completely ruins everything. Not only is the attack ineffective, but it also recharges the monster's energy, enabling it to launch a rain of lasers. The tiger manages to wound it with its claws, but this turns out to be a huge mistake. The tiger now becomes the primary target, given the immense threat it poses. All attacks are directed toward Hibiki, prompting other agents to shield the tiger by standing in front of it. Hibiki is the only one who survives, as not even Hinako could withstand it all. All of this is the result of the decisions they made, something noted by a silver-haired man who introduces himself as Alker, an old friend of Yamato who has been watching everything. He is curious to see how Hibiki handles all the problems caused by his recklessness, as not only was Hinako's incident his fault, but now Nita will replace her under the boss's orders. Hibiki can't allow anyone else to get hurt because of him, so he decides to return. However, Nita is already determined to fight. It seems she won't face too much trouble, as she can now summon the goddess Kikuri-jime, who is almost as powerful as Vyako. She manages to injure Septentrion severely, even forcing it to release all its external parts and weapons in a desperate attack. It seems like the end, but Hibiki arrives just in time to save the day, halting the attack. Moreover, he focuses all of Vyako's power, changing the color of the beam and giving it enough speed to pierce the monster's core. Another victory for the good side. Everyone celebrates. Hinako is still alive, Fumi has awakened, and the monster was about to launch another attack before disappearing. But don't worry, it will be fine because the demon sword Chin appears, finishing off Septentrion. The demon belongs to someone who disagrees with the agent's methods, and his name is Ronaldo. His goal is to have Hibiki join him, which seems to work quite easily since Hibiki is gone by the time Nita searches for him with the rescue team. As mentioned, Ronaldo is a former agent who disappeared some time ago. Fortunately, they found clues about him in the Nagoya region, so a team is dispatched to search for Hibiki. Daichai and Nita manage to infiltrate the area thanks to some crates. But the important thing is they arrived undetected and received recordings from the app showing a grim future for Hibiki. Only the two of them received this message, so no one else knows what's coming, and only they can prevent it. The rest of the agents continue with their plan to find him. At that moment, they receive news of an invasion appearing in the region of Japan. Preparations for this attack will be difficult, given the losses they suffered in the previous battle, in addition to the system that still needs repairs by Fumi, which will take quite some time. Yamato remains his usual self, only concerned with the outcome of the battle. He wants to save the world at all costs. However, Makoto isn't so sure about their methods, so she continues convincing herself that all this is for the good of humanity. 2 years ago, she joined the group at the direct request of the leader, just like Hibiki. Thanks to Yamato, she became the person she is today, which causes her loyalty to clash with what her heart is telling her. In the midst of all this, we meet a red-haired girl named Eri and her loyal friend, Youngo. Both were rescued by members of the agency, so in some way, they feel indebted to it. That's why they plan to head to the operations headquarters. From the agency that was taken over by the rebels, there is a simple infiltration route through a passageway known only to them, allowing them to free the prisoners. For now, we return to Daichai and Nita, who are still on their search, while discussing the support provided by Makoto that helped them in their quest to find Hibiki, which is the same reason why they were able to get here undetected. Along the way, they meet someone who is a member of the rebels and provides them with some supplies, thinking they are refugees. The supplies were stolen from the agency. Peace in the area ends when a large number of summoned monsters begin to appear, prompting Daichai and Nita to summon their own to fight them off. It seems they've defeated them all, but more monsters emerge. However, they are disintegrated by a phoenix, which turns out to be Hibiki's. In just one day, he had become quite famous among the people he had helped. He sees his two friends but chooses to avoid them. His two friends decide to search for him again, so they ask the rebels where their base is. The location is a headquarters seized from the agency. There, the doctors are allowed to continue working, but without communication with their superiors. The leader is quite friendly to everyone, bearing no grudge against the agents since they were only following orders, and he knows they are there to save the world. Ronaldo's problem lies with Yamato, the rebel leader. He was once a talented detective employed by Albino. Over time, he began to uncover things that made him suspicious. That's when he decided to dig deeper and discovered Yamato's plan. The man wanted to save the world, but not for humanity's sake, rather to impose his own order, thanks to the fame and prestige he would gain as the leader who saved the world. Hibiki joins this group because he isn't surprised to hear this, considering Yamato's intentions have always been clear, showing what kind of person he really is. Though Hibiki also disagrees with Ronaldo's excessive idealism, he would rather work with Ronaldo than let someone like Yamato gain more power. According to Ronaldo, his technical team's calculations indicate that an attacker will appear in this area. So, Hibiki, a man named Yuzuru, and a doctor are the ones who will face the creature. They won't wait for the Septentrians' attack to strike back. They will adapt during the battle. Every second wasted could be fatal for the civilians. This is entirely opposed to Yamato's life philosophy. The weak should be used for the benefit of the strong, who in turn are the only ones entitled to rule over the rest. Foolish thinking, right? 12 years ago, when he was still a teenager, his ideology had already formed like this. He always enjoyed luxury, and his behavior as a rich kid was very annoying. It was an attitude he could maintain without consequences thanks to his power. He was the only one able to summon this lion named Cerberus and control it, making him one of the strongest summoners ever recorded. He never had any friends. The only one who came close was Alker, someone he eventually respected, but distanced himself from due to their differences in views. It seems both wanted to prove the other wrong, which is why Alker orchestrated this final meeting. And with it, Yamato received a message from Nikaya about the future of one of his friends. Since Alker is the one closest to it, it seems he will be the victim. Eri and Youngo continue toward the planned location through the ventilation tunnels. Meanwhile, Daichai and Nita are taken by truck by one of the rebels to join Hibiki. On the other side, Hibiki is already with the rest of the team at the place where the attacker will appear for investigation. They briefly discuss Nikaya and her pirated app that summons large monsters, as the doctor believes it's dangerous to use it without knowing its origin. Ronaldo doesn't care, because to him, the fact that someone is supporting them means that someone is opposing Yamato. Plus, they can summon stronger monsters. After that, they return to the base, and the doctor starts asking Hibiki why he left the agency. The answer is quite clear. Hibiki knows that neither Albino nor the detective is right. Both are pursuing the same goal but in different ways. So, it's obvious he would choose the side that wouldn't make sacrifices. After the conversation ends, Hibiki is informed that he has visitors. His two friends, after seeing that he's okay, rush into the room to hug him, because we can't forget that they received a video about his future through the app. But now, after finally telling him everything, they want to take him back to Tokyo. However, Hibiki says he can't go back knowing that there will be attackers appearing in the city. Daichai, of course, thinks he's being foolish, knowing that the app's visions of the future have never been wrong. Staying in the most dangerous place is the worst decision. Still, Hibiki can't leave this mission, knowing that he has the power to fight. Because of that, his friends decide to stay with him to protect him. It doesn't matter that he doesn't want to endanger them. If one person stays, the others will stay too. So, he'd better not run away from them again. And don't think I've forgotten about the red-haired girl and her strange companion. The two have just entered the base through a tunnel and find themselves surrounded by rebels who are cleaning up the place. Here, a battle between monster summoners begins, and the two have an advantage because they have a cat in boots and a samurai cat on their side. These monsters aren't as weak as they look, they're fierce combat machines. However, they still can't defeat Ronaldo's monster. These two probably came to talk peacefully, but let's just say 80 isn't the patient type and prefers to fight right away. Hibiki tries to stop them through the loudspeaker, but it doesn't help much, unlike the earthquake that starts at the same time. It's a sign that an attacker is about to appear. Worse yet, the attacker is going to appear in the same place. You could say they were somewhat lucky because this time, the attacker was relatively small. It was a ring made of some unknown mineral, capable of firing laser beams from its center, causing massive destruction. On top of that, the ring was so strong that none of the monsters present managed to injure it, and they were all destroyed. If the attacker fired another beam like that, the Nagoya barricade would collapse. Fortunately, Hibiki arrives with his phoenix and other allies to stop the creature. Their combined attack seems to work. But instead of being destroyed, the ring duplicates itself and fires beams that destroy their summons and the entire surrounding area. This was the same beam that appeared in Hibiki's future vision, so his friends try to warn him to run. However, he presses on to fight with his tiger. He's almost hit by a direct attack, but the doctor's summoned monster protects him at the cost of its life. The biggest problem here is that Hibiki's phone falls to the ground and resets, leaving no one to defend him except Cerberus, a monster summoned by Yamato. At first, Cerberus' attack isn't strong enough to defeat the ring, but a modification developed by Albino allows Cerberus to awaken its true potential, even enabling it to modify its lion's abilities at will. Thanks to this, Cerberus gains a significant boost, allowing it to destroy the attacker with a single blow, while Fumi simultaneously regains control over all systems at the base. This happens just a few seconds before. That's how Yamato managed to arrive so quickly from Tokyo, as every agency base has a teleportation machine. The machine in Nagoya was supposed to be broken, but Albino could use it thanks to the necessary supply of magical power to operate it. Hibiki is furious. If Yamato already had this power, why didn't he use it to deal with Septentrion sooner? The answer is simple. To Yamato, the weak are pawns that must obey. That includes Hibiki, who will be taken back to Tokyo, whether he likes it or not. Ronaldo finally gets tired of his egotistical speech and decides to reveal the truth about his plan to everyone. He wants just enough chaos for the world to fall apart before he saves it. In this way, it would be easier to take control and create a world where the weak no longer exist, something that even Yamato did not deny, as he did not care what his subordinates thought. In fact, he had no intention of being kind to those who opposed him. However, Hibiki wouldn't let him hurt anyone, so he summoned a tiger as a first warning. At that moment, Alker appeared. It seemed the situation was becoming more complicated with the possibility of a confrontation between the two. Alker then decided to inform Hibiki that Yamato had come to the location after seeing a future video of Hibiki, meaning that, in some way, he considered Hibiki as a friend. According to Yamato, he only saved Hibiki because he saw him as an important tool in his plan. However, that wasn't the main point of their meeting. What really mattered was whether Hibiki would join the rebels or return with Yamato to the agency. Ronaldo tried to convince Hibiki not to go with Yamato, but Alker told him to be quiet, as the decision was Hibiki's alone and no one else's. He even summoned a demon capable of speech to show just how serious the situation was. The demon's name was Bifrons. He followed Alker's orders out of fear of his power, which was quite remarkable, considering this small man was able to defeat all the summoned beings present. Note that I mentioned Alker summoned Bifrons, as he did not use a phone, meaning he wasn't a summoner. Additionally, the talkative demon treated him as if he were something different from a human. Hibiki thought he was also one of those spirits, but even Alker himself didn't know how to define what he was. He was simply Alker, the troubled one. That's how he was known. He was the one who created the app Hibiki and others used to summon. He didn't really take sides except for Hibiki. He wanted to see which path Hibiki would choose and what the consequences of that decision would be. Now it was time for Hibiki to decide, and Yamato revealed an interesting fact. Septentrion would appear on the 4th day in 3 different places: Nagoya, Osaka, and Tokyo. This didn't mean there were 3 different invaders, but rather one entity that could be in 3 places at once, known as Trinity. Yamato told Hibiki he should protect the city of Osaka. Although Hibiki accepted, he made it clear he had no intention of being Yamato's pawn. Hibiki vowed to save the world and then confront Yamato if he tried anything harmful. In the meantime, Hibiki was willing to cooperate with anyone who shared the same goal, something Ronaldo didn't seem to like. Yamato ordered Ronaldo to protect Nagoya because he was responsible for the poor condition of the base. After saying that, Yamato left, and Alker disappeared unnoticed. Later, we saw him talking to two demons capable of communicating. They discussed something about parasites or a similar topic, as it seemed the reason humans could fight with the help of demons was because Alker still had hope in humanity, and his decisions greatly affected both species. In the past, Alker approached Yamato, believing he was the chosen one he had been searching for. When Yamato grew up and decided to change the world according to his ideals, Alker saw that he wasn't the one he had been looking for, so he left and now placed his hopes in Hibiki. For now, they were waiting for Trinity's arrival. Meanwhile, all agency members had to undergo routine physical checkups. This included Makoto, Fumi, and the others, even though they usually spent most of their time inside the base. Since Yamato still considered them part of the agency, Hibiki thanked Daichai for coming to look for him along with Nida. Without them, he might have been lost in his decision-making. While it was true they didn't do much, their presence and the relief from the earlier conversation gave him strength. On the other hand, Nida spoke to the doctor about the same thing. Nida felt that she wasn't very influential to Hibiki since they had only met 3 days ago. However, the doctor pointed out that she was wrong, as it was clear their friendship had grown strong, and the fact that Nida came here, risking her life as an ordinary girl, showed she was a very good friend, worth cherishing. They also discussed her feelings for Hibiki, which was a complicated topic because Hibiki didn't seem to see her as someone special, unlike Daichai, who appeared to be growing more interested in her. I mentioned earlier about Yamato's lineage. He came from the hot twin family, but this didn't seem to please him, as during dinner with them, he only felt disgusted by people who controlled the country through politics and his agency. Finally, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. Trinity would appear, and Makoto would lead the operation. She wanted to prioritize the evacuation of civilians, although Fumi thought this decision didn't make much sense, as her thinking was similar to albinos. She politely asked the rebels to protect Nagoya along with the agency members present. Failure was not an option. Although they managed to destroy 2 of the monster's cores, if all 3 weren't destroyed simultaneously, it would be in vain. After that, Hibiki and his group were transported to Osaka, where Hinako was waiting to greet them. Hibiki was very happy because he thought Hinako hadn't survived. Another interesting fact was that the medical checkups had another purpose. Fumi conducted them to analyze everyone and find the perfect candidate for sacrifice, which turned out to be Nida. Trinity began to emerge in Nagoya, and the characters without generic designs among the rebels were already prepared. Osaka had Hibiki, his friends, and Hinako, although they felt Daichai shouldn't have been there because he was considered weak, which is why he was busy searching for new summons on his phone. Hibiki also thought about the USB given to him by Ronaldo, which contained all the information he had gathered about Yamato and his family. Although he decided to act on his own, Hibiki felt that he needed to know the truth about this white-haired man, who was also the only one to face Trinity in Tokyo. Each core of Trinity was a spiky ball of flesh. Any wounds inflicted on them healed immediately, so continuous light damage attacks would be useless. Hibiki's group didn't have much trouble, especially Daichai, who summoned a new monster, a frog with a wig that fled immediately after seeing the invader, unwilling to fight the monster. On the other hand, Hinako successfully summoned the wolf that Keita used before, which was strong enough to make a large wound exposing the invader's core. Hibiki's tiger jumped to destroy the core, and it seemed like the job was done. But the monster reappeared because they hadn't destroyed all 3 cores simultaneously. Now that they had this information, Yamato used his powerful magic to enhance his summons, which managed to immobilize the ball in Tokyo. The rest was left to Hibiki and the rebels, who had to destroy the other 2 before they could demolish the tower that maintained the barrier. In the midst of all this, Hibiki received a video from the future involving Ronaldo, the doctor, and Yuzuru, so he warned them to leave immediately. However, the 3 had no plans to leave. Yesterday had already proven that the future could be changed, and that's what they intended to do. In fact, Hibiki should have realized this long ago. We remember he had seen Daichai with the truck and eventually survived after several unbelievable attacks. Eri was furious because the city she loved, full of memories, was being destroyed. So, she summoned one of the strongest monsters available and cast a spell with that summon. A massive ice attack exposed the invaders' core, while Hinako repeated her previous strategy, and Yamato began to act. It was time for a combined assault. The three cores were destroyed, and humanity claimed victory. However, it was not yet time to celebrate, as several projectiles from the creatures in Nagoya had been launched. Those projectiles landed on the truck where 5 people from Nagoya were. After a moment, only Yungo and Eri were left standing, while the other 3 were unresponsive, meaning they had failed to change their fate. This affected Anita and Hibiki more than anyone else. Hibiki felt responsible, while Anita felt connected to the doctor, as the doctor had a daughter who had now lost her mother, just like Anita. On the other hand, Yamato didn't care at all. He had already begun preparing an artifact passed down through his family for generations, along with Fumi. Meanwhile, Hibiki was once again visited by Alker, who wanted to clarify that he was not on the side of the demons, but he also couldn't help humanity. This trial didn't just hinder him. Humanity had to prove that they had the ability to survive in the eyes of Polaris, who was essentially a god wanting to protect the natural order of the world. Polaris had concluded that humanity hadn't done much good for the planet, so they had to prove otherwise. Frankly, it seemed very unfair since they were asked to fight creatures that could only be harmed by demons. Moreover, Polaris's view of humanity was somewhat distorted, which was something Alker also believed. However, he couldn't disobey Polaris's orders. Alker was a Septentrian, the sword of this god, meant to carry out his will. Therefore, he shouldn't care about humanity's fate at all. He was supposed to be an emotionless tool, but the fact that he had emotions only proved that Polaris was not all-powerful, meaning he could also make mistakes. That's why he provided humanity with weapons. I know this might sound a bit confusing, but all this explanation comes from someone more confused than we are. Alker knew his existence was very peculiar. He didn't know why he had developed consciousness or what he was supposed to do with it. The only thing he knew was that it pained him to see humanity's fate, and that his world was slowly disappearing. Yes, the final judgment over 7 days had begun, but the verdict had been passed long ago. This world was already starting to vanish. All the darkness devouring the planet's existence was emptiness. It was once believed that passing the 7-day judgment would save them, but in reality, the trial was merely a way for Polaris to reconsider his verdict. Nothing was guaranteed in Polaris's eyes. Only eternal void remained, where no trace of humanity would be left. Only what was inside the barrier remained of this world. Hibiki woke up in his room on the 5th day. Alker had been waiting for him to continue their conversation, as he no longer knew where to go. He actually wanted to help, but he couldn't. The Earth was disappearing, and it was hard to go anywhere without being noticed by agents or rebels. Alker also talked about the chosen one he had been searching for, as well as his past with Yamato, whom he initially selected because Yamato was born with extraordinary abilities, but eventually took the wrong path. The reason they knew this man as the one who suffers was because he knew the future of the world but could not change it. That suffering was a very human feeling, something Hibiki could understand, so he allowed Alker to stay in his room on the condition that no one could see him, as it would only cause problems. Unfortunately, Nita and Daichai entered the room to talk to Hibiki, who tried to convince them that Alker wasn't as bad as he seemed, or at least that's what he believed. Hibiki tried to humanize him a little so they wouldn't feel threatened, now that they knew Alker was a Septentrian. The problem was, Alker didn't know how to behave normally, and his ability to float wasn't very human-like either. Hinako and Eri, 2 individuals summoned by Yamato, are now preparing to face the 5th invader, who is about to arrive, while Nita and Daichai are keeping an eye on Alker. Hibiki discusses why only these 2 were sent, and it is explained that it's due to the characteristics of the upcoming enemy. Apparently, the enemy will appear in the ionosphere, a layer of the atmosphere that's too high for Hibiki's attacks to reach. Only Hinako and Eri possess the powerful invocations that can fly, at least enough to bring the invader down to ground level. Of course, there's no other reason why these 2 were specifically chosen. Hinako comes from a clan with an ancient dance that allows them to summon Shiva, while Eri is there because her invocation chose her, though the exact reason isn't that important. What matters is that the 2 don't get along. That's why the demon summoned by Aridi was chained and taken into the sky so that Shiva could unleash all his fury in a single strike aimed at the demon. The trick was that the demon was aligned with the invader's core, so the spear or full force hit the core too, destroying it in one blow. Problem solved, and everyone could go home for dinner and sleep peacefully. While it's true that they defeated the monster, the real battle was just beginning, as the Septentrian was always meant to be destroyed. Now, a 50-kilometer mass was falling on the city of Sapporo in Hokkaido. Those involved in the mission managed to evacuate, but the rest of the city wasn't so lucky, as they didn't even know what was happening. The only person who truly knew everything was Yamato, who was pleased with the outcome because the tower protecting the barrier in the city was still standing. This man knew everything that was about to happen, as his family had this information for hundreds of years, preparing to take advantage and control what was left of the world afterward. Yamato hosted a dinner party to celebrate his 5th victory with everyone. But Eri was far from happy after witnessing a city disappear before her eyes. Yamato, the albino, believed this was the burden that the strongest must bear. If she couldn't bear it, she would be the next to fall, so she needed to prepare. Nida and Hibiki also had their moral concerns to share, and of course, they received the appropriate responses. However, what I found more interesting was what Yungo did. He wanted to get straight to the point. What was the real motive for gathering everyone here? The answer was quite simple. They wanted to know what decisions those who survived until now would make, as only 2 days remained before judgment. After they defeated the 2 monsters, all survivors would have the right to meet Polaris, and their wishes would be granted. That's why Hibiki decided to inform everyone about Yamato's family plan. However, Yamato corrected him, saying he didn't follow his family. He had always lived by his own ideals. That's why he planned to rewrite the world to create one ruled by those with talent. He wouldn't let anyone interfere, which meant that in 2 days, no one would be able to stop him, and this was his final warning. Hibiki rushed toward him, warning that he wouldn't let this madness happen, to which Yamato responded with the same threat as before. But that wasn't all, as Makoto later went to Nida's room to deliver bad news. It was decided that she must be sacrificed to save humanity from the next invader. It turned out that on the 6th day, an invader would arrive that was crucial to a certain invocation, the only one Nida could use, and the chances of survival after doing so were 0. She was ready to do it because she wanted to save the world, though deep inside, she was terrified. However, she managed to pretend well enough the next morning, but she couldn't fool Alker, who knew exactly what was going to happen. That's why he appeared before Yamato, trying to convince him to find another way to resolve this. Apparently, he wanted to summon something called LX, which came from the Majin race, a race of demons so powerful that humans couldn't possibly contain it. The moment arrived. The agents brought Nida to the machine to summon Lug. When the monster appeared, it was too late for Hibiki and the others. Hibiki finally understood what Yamato had truly been attempting. They displayed the entire summoning process on the screen, trying to convince Hibiki and Daichai that this was necessary and had to be accepted. Hibiki rushed to stop it, but there wasn't enough time. Lug was summoned, and there were only 2 minutes before Nida's mind collapsed, so Yamato took control of her using the device and his magic, along with the demon. They reached a zone where a creature, dormant for years, awaited, and only he could activate it, something like a dragon capable of devouring everything. It was crucial in the fight against the next enemy, an endlessly multiplying mass, so they had to guide the metal dragon to devour it before it could spread, as if to seal it away forever. It wasn't too complicated. The real challenge began after 2 minutes when Danita's mind collapsed. The attacker had been contained. Yamato was exhausted, and Hibiki had just arrived, searching for his friend. But the problem was, his friend was no longer inside his body. Only Lug remained, and he had to destroy it. However, this wasn't something Hibiki was ready to do. Not only that, he didn't even have the chance because Lug hated the Yamato clan, seeing them as arrogant people who had attempted to disgrace a god like him. That's why Lug intended to use the remaining time in that body to destroy everything albino Ikai held dear. The other 2 were furious after Fumi told them that Nida had volunteered for this. She even mocked them, claiming she had a signed confession. But it was clearly a lie. Nida had been forced to agree because of the pressure placed on her, screaming that she didn't want to when they strapped her into the machine. Daichai wanted to end Yamato for committing such atrocities, but his weakness made him useless against the albino. All he could do was lament and cry for his friend, a kind-hearted soul who had been forced to do something she didn't want to in order to save others, all for the greater good. It was easy to say when everyone was safe in that room. A few words stood out to Makoto, as they knowingly sent her, aware that Nida would trust her words. Hibiki arrived at Lug's location, where Lug began taunting him, calling Nida mentally weak. But even that wasn't enough to provoke Hibiki into attacking. Yamato stepped in when Hibiki was on the verge of losing, irritated that Hibiki refused to fight when there was no hope left for Nida. It was clear that Hibiki didn't see it that way, which is why he wouldn't let Yamato hurt his friend. This led to a brief duel between the 2, ending when Lug intervened with his powerful spear. Hibiki shoved the albino aside to avoid being hit but was left vulnerable in the process. Fortunately, or perhaps by coincidence, our Hibiki managed to stop the attack. It turned out that the magic Yamato possessed also resided within Hibiki, which had just awakened thanks to the dragon that had chosen him as its master. This revelation made Yamato overjoyed, having finally found someone equal to him. Even Alker was surprised, not expecting any of this. The albino extended his hand to Hibiki, offering to guide others together into the new world they would create. But Hibiki refused. He would use his power to protect others. After what the albino had done to Nita, Hibiki hated him. Most importantly, though, he wanted to save his friend. So, he used the dragon to devour Lug's attack and connect with his friend's consciousness, still present since her body hadn't disappeared. She told Hibiki to leave, as she was too weak and couldn't continue down this path with them. It was too painful to live without her parents, unable to help in any meaningful way. Hibiki reassured her that it was okay to be weak. Humans were like that, and that's why they helped each other. He promised to help her live and wouldn't take no for an answer, as he didn't want to lose her. He reached out his hand so they could expel Lug from her body together. This was a miracle even Yamato couldn't believe was possible, though it came at a great cost to Hibiki's body. The albino would keep Hibiki safe with all the agency's medical magic because he believed Hibiki belonged to him, at least until tomorrow, when they would defeat the final attacker. Hibiki lay in a hospital bed while his friends watched over him. There was nothing they could do now to help, so it was best for them to rest, knowing he would be okay. Alker also had to leave, knowing Hibiki wouldn't return to that room and needing to resume his role as an observer. Before he left, two demons who had been working with him appeared, disgusted that he kept giving humans chances, as they wished to see eternal emptiness. One of the demons tried to dispose of him, but in an instant, it was turned into a small orb that vanished from existence. Alker was so powerful that the others clearly chose to obey and leave, just as they had done all along. Anxiously, he paid a final visit to Jakey and then departed because he had to prepare a few things before the final judgment. Meanwhile, the rest of the group was still waiting for Hibiki to recover, so Youngo and Nita began preparing Eri's favorite food so that everyone could eat together. Everyone was surprised to see this side of someone as quiet as him, reminding them that they hadn't properly introduced themselves yet. So, they decided it was time to do so and exchange contacts as well, as they had become friends after going through so much together this past week. This new circle of friends was born out of misfortune, as the 5 of them received a message from Nikaya. Specifically, they each received 4 messages revealing each other's futures. It was a terrible time to receive such messages because the final Strion had appeared, and its ability was omnipotence. This meant it had all the powers of the previous Strions, and thus it destroyed the Osaka base in less than a second. They called it the final boss, which is why they had to involve everyone to defeat this enemy. This time, no one would be left behind, including Hibiki. But first, let's take a brief look into Hibiki's past. His family was one of the strictest and coldest imaginable. Even the smallest mistakes he made were seen as huge problems, so Hibiki never reacted to anything. He never knew what affection felt like. Others treated him poorly because he was so serious, except for Daichai. With Daichai, he grew up and learned more about how kids his age behaved. They went on to high school together, but that wasn't enough for his father. His father merely congratulated him through a message, telling Hibiki to choose his friends wisely based on the benefits and importance they could offer in the future. Hibiki found that unpleasant, which is why he preferred to live like Daichai, enjoying every moment of his youth as much as possible. But that would soon come to an end, my friend. While you were sleeping, the others were facing the final boss, which resembled a spinning top made of stone. The creature was far too powerful. When it split apart, it could use the powers of previous enemies and new ones, like sonic waves that instantly erased all summons. Fumi managed to detect the frequency of the sound and neutralize it for a moment with one of her summons. But the striker detected her and destroyed that demon, as well as the building where Fumi was located. Yamato couldn't protect everyone at once, so he decided to do what was most efficient for him, protect himself, as his power was essential in this fight. The others began fleeing from the final boss's attack, while exploding ice cream cones started appearing everywhere. Eri and Youngo were the first to fall, followed by Hinako. Finally, it seemed like Daichai, Nita, and Makoto were about to meet the same fate, but Hibiki's phoenix protected them. They informed Hibiki of what had happened to the others. Filled with rage, Hibiki launched an attack, but his tiger also disappeared. Only his dragon magic was left to block the lightning as he blamed Yamato for abandoning everyone. The two continued arguing, and it seemed like everything was over. Their barrier was about to fall, and with it, the hope of defeating the monster. However, there was someone who never gave up. Even though he was weak, someone who had done everything he could until the end and finally saw his courage and efforts pay off. Daichai managed to summon an incredibly powerful demon, a giant even stronger than one of Yamato's two demons, and with one punch, he brought down the final boss. Thanks to this, Hibiki and Yamato were able to attack the core of the enemy, which fell piece by piece, until Yamato delivered the final blow, ending the judgment. JB was badly injured, but victory was in the hands of humanity. However, it wasn't over yet. They still had to prevent Yamato from meeting with Polaris to stop him from resetting the world according to his will. Yamato told them to stay quiet, and if they truly wanted to stop him, they would have to defeat him. If they couldn't, it would be better to remain silent, for once they attempted to attack him, he would fight seriously. This was a serious threat, but Alker appeared and told him to stop because he wouldn't let Yamato hurt Hibiki. Alker understood the rules of judgment well and knew that he shouldn't appear again after the judgment was complete. Therefore, he planned to attack Earth on his own will, with one goal, to end the one he considered his first friend, because by doing so, he would place all hope in Hibiki to restore the world that Alker so deeply desired. This fight was both simple and complicated at the same time. Their attacks were nothing extraordinary, and it seemed rather balanced. Yamato led Alker to Tokyo Tower, as that was the source of his magic, and he became stronger there. He grows stronger the closer he is to it, making this area advantageous for him. He continuously tries to persuade Alker not to fight so he can meet Polaris as soon as possible, but there's no turning back. This conflict will only end when one of them remains standing. It becomes clear when Nikaya's app sends messages to each of them, indicating that both will fall, or one will escape their fate by defeating the other. Hibiki receives a message from both, and Makoto also receives a message from Yamato. As a result, she informs Hibiki that she will help him. She knows she's a bad person. The cruel things she has done cannot be justified simply because she was following orders. That's why she has to continue down the path she's chosen. She had lost hope for the future until Yamato recruited her. He gave her a reason to live, and she couldn't abandon him after that. Hibiki understands that Makoto wants to help him because she doesn't intend to hurt him. He also doesn't want to change her in some Naruto style or anything like that. However, Makoto isn't a fan of that series and doesn't believe such a thing is possible. So, she will shift the balance in favor of the boss to ensure Alker doesn't finish him off. This action clearly throws away her chance for survival because the message about her future has also reached Hibiki. The battle between the two old friends becomes more intense. Yamato plans to use the app created by Alker to summon a powerful monster, as the summoning depends largely on the user's abilities. Alker doesn't want to let it happen, but he can't stop it either because his attack is intercepted by Makoto, who bids farewell to Yamato with gratitude. Albino successfully summons two gods, and with them, he manages to immobilize Alker, but this doesn't matter since he won't stop. He hates the fact that he has to do this, but the only way to prevent Hibiki from getting hurt is by capturing Yamato and turning into fireworks together. However, this is not the end of the story. Yamato manages to survive, and the world is collapsing. A small door opens in the sky, and whoever passes through it first will be able to meet Polaris. Albino is exhausted after his battle with Alker, so he decides to recall the two gods and let them run wild to deal with Hibiki while he heads for the door. Luckily, Daichai's giant fairy temporarily stops them. Yug, now controlled by Nita, is the only one capable of blocking them, allowing Hibiki to chase after Yamato. This means both of them must stay and disappear along with this world, a sacrifice they willingly make so Hibiki can continue the fight. Slowly but surely, the void starts consuming them, their memories fade, and they turn into nothingness. The only traces left of that world are Hibiki and Yamato. Polaris doesn't have the time to deal with both of them, so the final decision will be made through one last battle. Only the winner will meet Polaris, a lion against a tiger. The fight is balanced. Hibiki won't rest until he stops him, for the sake of all the lives he's destroyed in pursuit of his selfish goal. It's true that if he didn't, no one would survive, but even so, Hibiki can't accept his ideas. On the other hand, Yamato thinks Hibiki is too sentimental, but that's normal because, in the end, he's human, and that's how we behave. This shows that Yamato can no longer be considered human. Albino explains that none of this matters. Both were born with the power to become pawns of a god who believes himself to be omnipotent. If that god were truly omnipotent, he wouldn't have given two opposing people the power to choose the fate of the entire world. This shows that he himself is unclear and doesn't know the right decision. Yamato plans to create a perfect world based on his ideals with that power. He calls himself God, but Hibiki thinks differently. It's true that a perfect world can be recreated thanks to Yamato, but that world would be forced upon everyone by him. A decision like that shouldn't be made by any human. There are millions of people who love their lives despite the problems, because, for them, every part of their life is important in its own way. Humans truly live when they have the freedom to choose whether the decision is good or bad. Even if forced to only choose the good, nothing guarantees that it will bring happiness. Yamato's entire mindset stems from the society he experienced throughout his life. There is nothing else in his heart. However, his theory collapses because of one simple fact. He went to Nagoya to save Hibiki. And even though he claims Hibiki is just a pawn, that message can only be understood by friends. If, deep down, he sees Alker and Hibiki as friends, that means he is human. Therefore, he still has time to experience life differently before making a decision like this. Naruto's Evangelion influence seems to have worked, but Yamato is not like Sasuke. He acknowledges that Hibiki is his friend, he's just unwilling to abandon his ideology. So, now he decided to take it a step further. He summoned 2 gods and even merged them using all of his app's abilities. With these tricks, no one could stop him, unless you faced another character with extraordinary power who happened to be Hibiki. Because his friend's demons appeared to save him and began to merge. But do you think that's all? No, it's bigger than that. Kirito and his tricks are nothing compared to this guy. He merged all fusions to create an even stronger demon. I may have downplayed the excitement of the fight, but what can I do when an epic battle between Lucifer and Satan ends in a hug? From there, a light appeared representing Polaris, and we were automatically taken back to the beginning of the series, when Hibiki and Daichi had just finished their practice exam. They did the same things, the only difference being that this time they talked to Anita when they saw her on the train, so she would become their friend. From here, everything changes. Hibiki starts crying as he sees the 2 of them. Mikaya's video is nothing more than a disgusting sticker, and the train doesn't derail. Hibiki finally remembers everything. The wish he asked Polaris was to be given a chance to fix everything. So, he runs off to find someone, as he's the only one who remembers everything, and it's his responsibility to inspire the change that will influence others. Slowly, all the supporting characters start to experience this change. However, the most important one is Yamato. He has come back to life, but he's no longer the Yamato he used to be. After surviving, he still remembers his defeat and his own weaknesses, memories etched on his face with a scar he now cherishes. Hibiki cries with joy, seeing that everything will be alright, the same feeling Alker has now, having witnessed the rebirth of humanity thanks to Hibiki. Because of that, Alker is no longer needed in this world, and he can finally leave without any anxiety.